transitional montage where we see you and Dalí getting ready for the party in the recording studio, respectively, you transform when you set your wig. And I wanted to ask you, how important did the wardrobe and the hair and makeup influence you while you were preparing for this role?
Once I was in hair and wardrobe and hair, then it was a big help. That's if you have a good costume designer. For me, this always helps enormously. It just gives all of a sudden, if you have things that you really don't know, it just puts you in that place. It puts you in that time. You start to walk differently. You start to move differently in those kind of dresses than you do in your, today stuff. So that was really, and she had like really high value stuff. I mean, these were like Dior costumes and, all that stuff.
Yeah, because Gala was very couture.
Yes.
She was friends with Schiaparelli. She was like, there was a lot of kind of hippie stuff going on around she would always disapprove when Amanda would wear some hippie dress. It's like, because Gala was very like, classic. So we made sure that there was like, the designer dress, the high end for Gala.
Yeah, good quality. She liked good quality.
Yeah.
This is
and she's very precise as a person.
Yeah.
So she liked this precision also, and that only with really couture stuff you have that incredible precision.
I want to talk to you about the challenges of, obviously these are real people. So what was it like bringing these very complex people to life, and how do you sink your teeth in a role like this?
Well, Barbara first.
Oh, well, I think it is always more scary than playing something else, because I have done other historic characters and I always was really scared, because you want to do justice to the person. And so you do prepare and you read and all that, and what was said about her and what Dalí said about her and what other people said about her. But in the end, these are just like the pieces of the puzzle. And then you have to kind of find that one thing that, I don't know, can I call it the soul of the character? And that often happens with the costumes. And in the case of Gala, it was very difficult because I read a book about her and it was so misogynist, the book. I mean, I had the feeling the author really hated her. And there were said so many horrible things about her. And yes, it is true, she was at times really horrible, but she was also this nurturing person for Dalí. And I don't think he would have been what he is without her. And the thing which was difficult, and that of course was wonderful to work with Mary, that you don't turn her into a caricature, because she had traces, and she was described sometimes that she could be, close to a caricature, and we didn't want to do this. So how can you, portray somebody who goes to these extremes but just doesn't lose her humanity? And on the other hand, also, it's a movie, it's not a stage. On the stage you could be in these extreme situations much more expressive, and in the film you have to control it a bit, but that's why you have a good director like Mary.
It's amazing. The I will not be poor scene is iconic. So good. But Mary, how closely do you think you stayed to the true story, and how much freedom were you allowed to give yourself to create the story and bring it to life, and obviously the times that we live in?
I mean, I try always in these movies based on real, just to stay as close to the real stories as you can, because to me, nothing is as strange and weird as real life, as unexpected. And the danger is if you leave the real story behind, then you tend to follow, and this is true of a lot of sort of Hollywood movies. They fall into a kind of Hollywood template where some of the story just starts to run on the track of many other movies. And in fact, if you stay close to what really happened, it will always be weird and a bit lumpy and a bit odd. And I like that. Like, things don't quite add up. Like the behaviors of these characters is just very strange. I mean, a marriage that is so close, that is so romantic, that has no sex, you wouldn't make it. Gala falling in love with the lead of Jesus Christ Superstar. It's just so odd, and I just loved these crazy things that would happen, and then Amanda Lear being the muse and Gala being annoyed by it, but also tolerating it because it set her free. I mean, all these relationships, the more you delve into it, you understand there's a dynamic between them that sort of makes sense. So yeah, James is a construct. The character of James is made up, but there were many young artists, beautiful young art assistants passing in and out of that world. So, the same with Suki's character. There were many women like that.
Amazing. You've worked on truly so many iconic films, a lot of which that I've written about. And I wanted to ask, how did those past experiences influence you into making this film?
I mean, I think I have a mode now of how to approach a period film, which is kind of very natural to me. I mean, having originally come from documentary, where I sort of really immerse myself into, without having such a preconceived notion of the story, immerse myself in the, books and documentaries and films. And then out of that, the outline, you start to see what the tensions in the outline starts to appear. And then working very closely, making sure that I have design department heads who are sort of on board with that vision of creating a realism, but it's also kind of a heightened realism. And that's what all these films have. Like they're rooted in reality, but it's a sort of, you're distilling it,
I want to thank you for lighting this movie. A lot of like movies and TV I see now, I'm like kind of squinting because they're so dark. So I want to thank you for saving Barbara, you shared the role with a young actress, and she was also fantastic. And the both of you conveyed this energy so well. I was wondering, did you have any sort of discussion with her about how you would play the character and how you would develop that between the different time periods?
We talked a little bit. We didn't have much chance to talk a lot. When I saw the first time the film, I saw it recently in Belgrade in the festival, and I was actually really surprised how much we look alike.
Yeah,
which I didn't see in real life so much. But in fact, I think she actually in real life looks more like Gala than I do. But we still look alike. And no, unfortunately, we didn't have. But then on the other hand, I think she said to me she knew some of my work, and so she kind of tried to copy that a little bit. And yeah. But
yeah,
it was just wonderful. And we didn't work together, but it was one of the things which was really great for me in the film was the other actors. I loved working with every one of them. I mean, the young actors were just lovely. We did this during the pandemic, this film. And so it kind of brought us even more together outside the filming. And Sir Ben was marvelous to work with. I mean, that's for me always very important, because you asked me about how I prepare a role. So there's one thing, what I think, but in the end, my colleagues, my other actors, the people I'm talking with, they are really important to me. And I was very lucky in this film with all of them.
So great. I mean, the energy and the chemistry was just so undeniable. Another huge part that I really love was the soundtrack. I love the way that music played it's such a story on its own. I wanted to ask you about your creative prep with the soundtrack.
It's funny because we had written certain songs into the script, which had David Bowie and, certain things that we could never afford. But I kind of I've learned to really embrace the restrictions of making a low budget independent film, because you say, okay, well, I can't have those very famous songs, but what about something that's less famous, but still evokes glam rock? And I remember Cockney Rebel, come up and see me, make me smile, from the 70s. And they just summed up a period of glam rock that was perfectly for that era. We managed to get one Alice Cooper song, one Roxy Music song, and then we had a great composer, because we also decided that we needed a really kind of romantic full orchestral score for, you know, I wouldn't say the film's a melodrama, but it needed the emotion. It needed a kind of full emotional score that I think helps a lot to sort of fill in the subtext almost, you know, of what's going on.
I love films about artists in particular because artists have, you know, a very high emotional toll. So there is kind of that roller coaster feeling. And I think that it was definitely felt while watching this movie that I felt was very true to the time in the story. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Barbara. How did you, I mean, I love the character and the person. I think it was so fascinating the way that you balanced her, you know, her sensuality with her boyfriend and then her almost sort of maternal side with Gala. So in terms of like, I guess, bringing that character to feel fully rounded, like, was there anything about her that surprised you when you were working through that?
Oh yeah, it's kind of ties a little bit to that what I said before. I'm always surprised because I react to what my partners also do. And for example, with Zach, the Jeff Feinhold character, we had the chance. I don't think it's in the movie, but we had this chance to improvise a little bit, like in the bar scene, and so all of a sudden you say things or you do things, and your partner does things that you don't expect, and it kind of embellishes the character, the inside of the character for yourself. And even if that's not necessarily now featured in the film, but it adds to you know what the character is in other scenes. And yeah, that happens. You know, that every day is a new day, and I like to see my partners in a you know in a new way and observe them and try to react to them. So yeah, there can surprising things happen.
Amazing. It was, I mean,
and you know what? It's wonderful if you have a director who allows the space for that. You know, who doesn't say, well, what in the script it says exactly that. You know, although it was a wonderful written script, but for example, the scene when I'm on the floor with Dalí and he has his boo-boo, that you gave us the space to kind of do this. You know. And that's
one of my favorite scenes. I just love that. And you start singing to him. It's fantastic. And you both, it was great because you and Ben, you both were kind of on a roll there with just, just creating that scene much better than it was on the page. I felt it really came alive. I was so excited.
Well, you know, the thing is, it was a really good basis for that. You know, you can't improvise if you have a garbage scene, then you don't improvise and you're not inspired. But that's the advantage of being older, I realized, that we both had a life behind us and both had partners and marriages probably and whatnot, you know. So you can all of a sudden, you can sort of work out of your own experience and put this together with a fiction. So that's nice.
Yeah.
You guys said that you shot this during the pandemic. So what is it like rewatching this now, almost probably 3 years later? I know it's certainly been a passage of time.
Yeah, yes, I'm aware of how few extras we had, you know, because it was super expensive to get background people because you had to test them twice, which was added like $300 or 300 euros per extra. So the party scenes are very funny because there's so few people, but I think we moved them around quite judiciously. So but every time I see those scenes, I'm kind of reliving that drama, you know.
You wished.
I wish.
I have to say, now that I don't think I noticed it.
But you know.
I don't think now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that is true, isn't it? There weren't a ton of extras, but honestly, the way that the film was shot and the story that you were trying to tell, I mean, it was so lively, you never really notice what's not there.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. Find ways to just move them around, you know, change their costume and put them back on.
Exactly. Is there anything that you're hoping the audience will take away from this film now that it's almost out in the world?
Fun.
Yes, fun. Yes, yes. I hope that people see that a lot of it is a comedy. I think right now when they first approach it, it's like, oh, it's about artists, so it's a serious movie, and there is serious aspects, but it's also very much, a lot of it is fun, I hope, and there's a lot of good comedy, I hope, in wonderful comic performances. It's bittersweet comedy, but really what I hope people take away is a sense of the humanity of Dalí and Gala. As crazy as their behavior was and as monstrous as they were sometimes, I would like people to feel compassion and to see their full humanity, and that, in a way, the world is a bigger place for them having been there.